Welcome back, Elizabeth Kilvert, to the podcast. Now it's called the Cash Rich Exit Podcast. When you were here before, it was under the previous branding of I'm a Millionaire, so now what? But it's perfect. We're full circle. Startup baby, the growth and petulant teenager to the empty nester and the exit. So, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Here we are. Here we are at the end of the circle, at the end of the cycle. And I mean, before the empty nester too, I also had the adult child that lived in my basement. So I'll add
Right.
that other life stage where that was the kind of the sale of the adult child in my basement. And now here we are looking at, it's really funny because I grew up of the era that or of the vintage that we always grew up with, like Freedom 55, Freedom 55. And when you're 10 and 12, it just seems like ancient. And now here I just had my 55th birthday. So I have achieved Freedom 55.
It's amazing,
Yeah.
right? So, just before we jumped on here, we said, yeah, it's full circle. So, what you shared with us in the beginning were some of the means at which you needed
Yes.
to access capital. So you're in we'll say comfortable position, having exited. You're not don't have those hangovers of borrowing against the house, and now
Yeah.
you have your fund that you can live the next chapter of life, right?
Absolutely. And I think that that's really important when people have their businesses to realize there are a couple of things to structure their business in a way. When you first start, people always say, pay yourself first. Well, that may or may not be possible as a very small scale business. But I think the important thing to do is once you start running and get going, is to remember that as an entrepreneur and a private business owner, you're also having to invest in your retirement. You're not getting a pension. You're not going to have extended medical and dental care. So to make sure we're all focused on that quality and quantity of life. So to make sure that your business, you're investing wisely and it's providing it for you. And to remember that, some people start business with the sole intention of selling that business and then moving on to the next one and profiting. Other people, their business is their lifestyle, and it's so
Mhm.
inextricably tied that they can't imagine ever leaving it or ever giving it up, and they're going to be involved. And I knew my business was going to be a good long run, but then I had the key indicators of it being time to exit. And I have to say, it really saddens me when I see people just get tired and frustrated and just leave the business, or it's not financially viable and they just put the key in the door and they lock it and the for lease sign
Yeah.
goes up,
Yeah.
because there's so much there, whether it's your coveted bread or cookie recipe, that still has a cash or
There's a
sellable.
value there
There's a
somewhere.
value.
Yeah.
There's a value. And do not forget, plan that exit, plan that strategy. Start thinking three, even more beautiful, 5 years out. Get
Mhm.
that balance sheet in order. And there are some key things that people forget. You could have built a big, beautiful brand. It's not the brand that people are going to look at for the valuation of
Mhm.
that business. Look
Mhm.
at the type of sale, look at what's there, and to structure that carefully before you're exhausted, before you're fed up, or when you know it's just time to go, and to really pay attention to those signals inside of
Right.
yourself.
So speaking to that, how did you know it was the right time for you, Elizabeth?
Absolutely. There were some key changes. As you know, like it was a retail based business. So two bricks and mortar, olive oil,
Mhm.
balsamic specialty foods, and then online. Now we know retail sales, whether you hear the retail sale is dead, or it's omni-channel and it's going to be an EI hologram, or you're moving towards your becoming a vending machine, whatever it might be. There's a multiplicity of directions
Mhm.
that sale can go in, as long as you have a good product, an excellent customer service, and all of those key factors of running a good business in place. But what you have to do is you have to make sure that all of those things, as I said, are shored up, that you have a really strong business. And then you have to look at what the future might hold. The new technologies, as I said, AI, omni-channel
Hmm.
marketing, where it's going. And you have to say to yourself, am I the person to take it there? Is that fair to this business, which has employees invested in it, has a long-term customership who still wants to have your products? And the answer for me was no. I love learning. I'm a lifelong learner. I love my industry. I love the agronomy. I find AI very interesting. I find all these things interesting, but interesting to the point of me taking it to that next phase and into fruition. No, I'm not the person for it, but there might be somebody out there who's really keen on all of the things that you need to do in this climate to have a thriving retail bricks and mortar and online business. So that was the
Well,
first thing.
yeah,
I,
and I'm
I
going to
wasn't
say
I wasn't interested in putting my energy there. That's not where I wanted to go.
that is a lot of self-awareness, though, to get to that point. A lot of
Yeah.
self-awareness, because as much as the adult was living in the basement, I mean, you could have been the coddling parent that kept them there.
100%. And I call them, those are those businesses that you go by and they have the plants in the window that are 20 years old and that are all crazy. And there's just not the same care of detail to
Mhm.
things. Things are run down a little. The last 10% of details aren't there. When an employee says, I have a great new idea, and you're like, fantastic, tell me about it. And it's kind of a bit of a frozen. And those are the
Frozen
things.
face.
You're still saying fantastic, let's engage, let's talk, but you're not feeling it. You're not
Yeah.
feeling and I was always about the mentorship and the new ideas. It's
Mhm.
also that snooze test on the alarm clock. Well, we don't have digital alarm clocks, but we have the snooze on our phone, right? Are you still jumping out of bed in the same buoyant way that you used to? You're dragging a little bit more. Do you have more time that you have to give to aging parents, or maybe there are other familial needs or
Mhm.
friends who have needs, or even your own personal health concerns? Like this is something you really have to watch in an environment of stress, etc.,
Mhm.
is to make sure you're not getting to that point and that you're looking after yourself. And then you kind of project yourself 5, 10 years from now. What is it that where is it that I see myself? Where is it that I want to be positioned, right? Is it that I've been looking at the world and travel and all kinds of things? Because when I started the business, it was very different, basis and where you had to invest your time and energy as opposed to now. So it's the investment of your time and energy where you need to place it to have a thriving business, and then where you need to place it to have a thriving self. And if those two things are disconnected, it's time.
It's
It's
time to
time.
do. Yeah.
It's time to do that.
How did you know you found the right buyer?
Okay. So we talk about business, right? Like for me, really important that it matches my core values and how I conduct myself. So the right buyer for me, there's first and foremost, it's kind of a few first and foremost. They had to take care of my people, right? So,
Mhm.
from just a pragmatic standpoint, they had to recognize my people, recognize their seniority, keep their health and dental, keep their remuneration, keep all of those things status quo, and they were going to have to respect them and treat employees in the same way. But also, I wanted them to still have that passion. They had to have that passion for olive oil, for balsamic, for foods. And I really based my business on a couple of tenants, and one is culinary because I get a huge joy out of that. And the second one is education. So
Mhm.
customer education, employee education. I continuously learn and thrive. This is an old industry that keeps evolving like so many things. Climate change comes into place. It's a commodity. There's so many things. So they had to be someone who loved to continuously learn, who is going to treat customership in that same way, and also treat the wonderful people who were still in my business and respect that product, the customership, and the team that was there. So those were the key things for me. Those were the key things for me. Oh yes, and there's that little thing called price point.
Not to make it a small point. It's actually a
Yeah.
fairly
Yes. Right.
significant one.
Because there
Right.
is that goal. I mean, you can run your numbers and then normalize them,
Mm,
and there's all kinds of great formulas. And you work closely with a tsunami of accountants, and you work closely with a tsunami of lawyers to
there's-
make it all
mhm.
happen. But really, it was looking for that key individual. And some people might go, "Who's interested?" Right? Who might want to thrive on this? And there are a couple of ways you can go with brokerage firms, et cetera. As I said, I'm not a big business. I'm not a big industry. I'm not a corporate conglomeration. I'm not a multinational. So for me, what pinged in my head is who's your competition and do they want to expand? And the answer was yes to both of those things because we kept in touch with each other. Well, well, then I'm not proposing to sell my business. I sat down and proposed their grand expansion plan to them, which was something they wanted to do.
What's
So
in
I
it for them?
What's in it for them? So I
Yeah.
proposed, I said, this isn't a sale for me. You want to expand. What is it oh, you want to expand to 2 stores? Well, isn't that convenient? Let's talk about your expansion plan and roll that out and see if we can align on everything else and let's make it happen in not an expedited way, but let's get this done. And I knew they were somebody who just once they got something in their mind, they got things done in a fair, open, and communicative manner. Because it's like, if we're going to do this, let's not drag it out over a year. So we sat down in November,
That was
uh,
November of 2024.
24. We sat down in November. We had our first minor discussion in October. I said, go home, check with your family, make sure that's okay, because you're going to go from one to three, and that's a big deal because yeah, you're having a new baby in like a month. So we were okay on that, and then of course, why not endeavor to do this during the holiday season, which is about 25% of the income, the busiest time. So we said, let's call a moratorium because you're having a baby and it's holiday season. So let's not pile a ton of stuff. Let's get our ducks in a row.
Yeah.
January and February are generally a bit of a downturn. And so then we have January, February, and we wanted to do a final handover on April the 1st, but I said that's not the best for social media communication because I
April
think we
1st.
all had
Haha.
friends, yeah, who are just like on Facebook, like, hi, I thought I'd sell my business. I'm a, you card, you, oh, Liz, you funny, funny thing. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm
Like
not, I actually, yeah.
this is not
Yes,
fake news.
yeah, yeah. I actually did sell my business. So it went to April the 4th, but we stuck to our timelines and we got everything done. Yeah.
Yeah, so things aligned, but also because along the way you took this intentional thought process about where's the business at, what's happening in the industry, and what's happening with me. And
Yeah,
so in
absolutely.
that process, also being open to where are the opportunities if and when I it's time to exit. So keeping your eye
Yeah,
on the entire environment in order to take those
100%.
next steps, right?
Yeah, and I think, it's just like there are a lot of things that happened in that 12 years that I had the business and we all can remember the most recent things like, what happened in 2020 and those 4 subsequent years and, large trucks honking their horns downtown and, not to trivialize any of those things, but it just seemed like I always say to people, there are things that happen, but when it starts to feel relentless, that's when you know. Because when you can just take on, it's like, it's a challenge. It's a new challenge to take on. I can find a solution. But when it feels like everything is starting to become relentless, then that is really a key indicator that it's time to go because you don't have the energetic expense or don't want to put the energetic
Mm.
expense there. And it was brilliant because April 4th, was the signing over, and April 6th, the tariff went on olive oil. So I was just like, I didn't need to to go through a global financial restructuring and to go through, the tariff trade and all of that. So it was a good time for me. It was a good time for me because yeah, the future is very unpredictable
Hmm.
in markets and climate in all kinds of things. Because as I said, it's an agricultural crop at the end of the day too. So you've got that to contend with.
Yeah. So a lot of introspection, looking at the external world, an approach. So it was fairly expedient, right? An approach
Yeah.
conversation in October, some other discussions in November, a pause over the holiday
Yeah.
season, and then a dive into negotiations in January, February.
Yeah.
Would
Yeah.
that be sound about right?
Absolutely. So, for anyone who's thinking about this, have your files in order, have everything like, systematic, know what who your contractors are, have your contracts in place, all kinds of the documentation that you need. The first thing you do is you sign the NDAs. I think that was one of the hardest things was it's just like, my team are smart people and they could feel a systemic change around them. And one of the things was anything kind of with a logo, we were starting to run down on. So, like bags, packaging, that sort of thing. And they noticed that. They didn't ask because they knew I would say when the time is right. But when you're under an NDA, it's like you're a parent. And as a concerned parent, you're not going to worry someone for 4 months. Think about that. The
Hmm.
pressure of the holiday season and then the sale of the business, and they have an unknown owner coming in. And it's like, when do you tell them? Because that can be a very worrisome time. So, they could see things changing around them, but we signed the NDA. We did everything absolutely properly and in order. But having all that paperwork, all the ducks in a row, I don't wish this process on my worst mortal enemy, in some ways. Like it's absolutely tenacious because you're still running your business on top of it, and it's
Yeah.
more than a full-time job to sell your business.
That all being said,
Yeah,
it wouldn't have been you wouldn't have been able to get through this process quite so quickly if you didn't have your numbers and your documents and everything already in order. Like
that's right.
if you had to scramble to shore
Oh
up the
yeah.
contracts. So this
Yeah,
goes to speaking to having the processes and
absolutely.
procedures in place
Yeah.
long before you're in a position where you want to exit
Training
or sell.
manuals, absolutely.
Yeah.
Training manuals, contract,
SOPs. Yeah.
all of those, yeah, standard operating procedures, all the things that you don't even think of, all of those dates, like when do your alarm services stop and end? When do your IMIT services, what other kind of things do you have? Do you have snow shovelers and window washers? Those are minor. What's your intellectual property? And then a big thing too, really think about what you want in that exclusionary. For me, it was my laptop. One big thing that people don't think about in this, and I've heard a couple people say, which really triggered me. I was very lucky that I had a close friend who had sold her business, which was a substantial business. So she even gave me those good indicators, like, like when you're getting a house, like save 7% for closing costs,
Hmm.
all of that kind of thing, making sure you have a taxation structure. Are you going to do an asset ssale?
Or
Or
a
are you
share
going
sale.
for a
Yeah.
share sale, right? So what's the best? Think about like you might be getting a big lump of a big lump of change, or as my friend says, a big pile of cash. I always love it. But from a tax perspective, how are you going to do and what are you
Yeah.
planning to do? Because you want to be very careful how you're handling that money so that assets to share sale. And another thing, it seems minor, but I want you to think of your email address, right? Whether it belongs to a corporation or whether it belongs to your own company. As much as it's our work email address, we pepper things in there that are of a personal nature. Or when it's your own business, sometimes it can even be a highly personal nature. So, how can you retain your email address? Or how do you transfer your email address to? Do you retain your email address? That's part of company property. That goes with the
Yeah.
sale. So start cleaning up your email and getting that organized because that's going to go, which also means everything that's attached to your email, whether it be your own personal utility bill or that reminder on your Marriott points or whatever, or the
Right. Any
Canada,
any kind of subscription that you may have
anything,
used your email
anything.
for.
Pay
Yeah.
attention a month in advance to what's coming in and what that's attached to, like your password resets, all kinds of things. You have to really change that over. So your email is attached to a lot of your life. So make sure you get another email and reattach it. But I also have to say, in that work email going, and not being responsible for six emails and a Facebook and an Instagram and handing over social media and things, that was the liberation that I needed to start on the process of starting my life post Unrefined Olive again. Because
Mhm.
if I still had of been answering and retaining that email, it was better to just have that go with the business with the autoresponder
Mhm.
saying, if this is of a personal nature, please contact Elizabeth at this new email. But there is a lot attached to that. And remember, that's the email that you're used to during the process of communicating with your lawyers and your accountants. So don't say things to your lawyer like, this person is the most hard-headed son of a monkey I've ever dealt with, because they're getting that
They're
email.
gonna see it because
They're
it's a
gonna
corporate
see it.
asset.
Exactly. But you know what? Whomever is getting that email is going to be far too busy than to sit there and try to plunder through my very, full but really not that interesting life. But just remember all the
It
things
is
that
there. It
it
is
is
there.
there. It is
That is an
there.
interesting piece that's not come up in a discussion in the
Yeah.
past, but something to be aware of for sure.
100%. Or devices, people who have a device that goes over to the business. Make sure you keep, just like, for me, I have a business side of my wallet and a personal side of my wallet. Have a business side of your communications and a personal side of your
Hmm.
communications. And that means electronic devices and emails as well. So start separating that out, fairly early on as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, be tenaciously organized. It also helps in the negotiations, because when you can bring up facts and figures and hand documents over, people are like, this person really knows what they're doing. It's kind of
Hmm.
like if you walk into a mechanic and go, my car's kind of going ting ting wang bang bong. The mechanic might be like, ooh, we got a hot one here. But if you can use, and that's again, financial literacy is
Hmm.
key.
Hmm.
Research what's involved in this. If you can talk exactly about, what your capital assets, their valuations are, but also, if you have the vocabulary, in order to go into that, you're going to be taken, of course. I mean, you're a serious business person, so why wouldn't you know everything about your business
Right.
inherently? Right.
Um, Something I didn't bring up to you before we jumped on here to record, but in leading up to this,
Yeah,
where did you get some of your learnings from as far
yeah,
as the process of selling? Because you're a lifelong
yes,
learner, so I'm sure, had some resources that helped you get in the right
yeah.
headspace and know what you needed to have in order to go through this process.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we were talking earlier about like the importance of ice cream in my life. And it's just like I call books this way, but also business this way, right?
Hmm.
Business brings you a lot of joyous moments, which are like ice cream, but you can't subsist on a diet of ice cream alone. So you got to have your crunchy kale moments too, right? I wish life was all ice cream and pleasure and lots of different flavors. And for me, that is learning as
Hmm.
well. You've got to then employ those things. So I would say some of the key things, honestly, you had three learning webinars that were really key to me that I learned and reinforced. I belong to WPO, Women Presidents Organization.
Hmm.
They always have an annual learning event and conference. So anything, it was sort of like pre 1920s or 1920s. Oh my gosh, yes, we're flappers right now. But pre 2020s, everything was scaling, right? Scaling up, growth, growth,
Hmm.
growth. And then it seems now a lot of it is valuation and then selling. So any seminar that was regarding that, I did interview and go through the first part with an organization who is a broker, a
Hmm.
business broker located here in Ottawa, and they were invaluable because they had those checks and balances of what to get ready,
Hmm.
for a sale. So, your lawyer, your accountant, talk to them. Any seminar that is available that's out there, and then rely on your own personal networks, which are key. So for me, I had a very close friend who was just opened her binder of just incredible, wise, sage advice and steps
Hmm.
of what I needed to have and what I needed to do. So your own personal networks are key and look at a couple of different business types. But the other advantage that I had is I was selling to somebody who had the same type of business in my field. So it wasn't somebody who was unfamiliar.
Hmm.
So, we were speaking the same language right from the get-go, right from the get-go. So that made things, incredibly wonderful. It'd be like, if a restaurateur sold to a restaurateur rather than, a florist decides they want to be a restaurateur or
Hmm.
vice versa.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
that was helpful. So we had a lot of okay, the lawyers are doing so we had a lot of offside talks and chats
Yeah. Yeah.
with one another because we wanted to make this see happen. So yeah, your own personal networks, business organizations that are out there, find financial people like yourself. Business Development Canada often offer strategic workshops and things on financial literacy, and even some of the big accounting houses do as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Invest Ottawa in our part of the world. So yeah, just prime yourself up on all of those
Yeah.
things.
Don't be afraid to ask the questions.
Mhm.
Ask them and get some answers and keep yourself informed.
Yeah. And
Um,
again, networks, if somebody's in your field and you know that they've sold, just say, hi,
mhm.
will you sit down with me and just have like a little coffee and go over a few steps with me?
Yeah, can be invaluable. Listen, were there any real surprises, whether positive or negative, that you're willing to share? I say willing to share.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, geez, I'll probably think of them as soon as we finish the interview. I love legal and technical language. I have since like junior high school. So like that was really great. So I really dove into those crunch kale documents, and that was really important. Don't just sign something because you're
Hmm.
getting advisement from someone. Take the time really to understand them, but it's just like you see the billable clock going tick, 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 tick as you're having those conversations. I think, yeah, again, to go back to the email and everything that's inextricably linked, like, your laptop might be linked into the network of computers, which is linked into the Google Share Drive, your shared drive, which is linked into. So all of those things kind of come as one unit, and you can't just kind of tease and pull out information. So pay attention, like how all of that
Hmm.
is networked together. But no, I'll probably think of something really brilliant or funny or like poignant as soon as I stop talking to you. It just,
Well, when we go for ice cream next, you can tell
yeah,
me, here's what I forgot.
aha. This is what I remember. Just keep one thing I will say that really helped me through this process. And it might seem, because I wanted to get it done and that sort of thing, but you can only get it done if you're in top fine form. So I made sure I ate really well.
Hmm.
I hydrated really well.
You slept,
I,
you got your
I,
sleep.
well, no, that was pretty much off the table, to tell you the truth. It was 2 to 4 hours a night
Okay.
for a lot of times. And I'm good with lack of sleep, and I knew I pushed myself through, but I did do some rejuvenating things. So
Hmm.
there was one day, like, because as I said, you get the tsunami of things, and when you push the tsunami back, you kind of have like this 8 hour, maybe 12 or maybe 20-hour window where everybody else is answering, and then they're going to come back to you. And I realized one night at 2 in the morning, I just pushed everything out. So I have a glorious until tomorrow night, probably, where I won't get things back. So I jumped on a train and went to Montreal for the day.
And just took
And
a day to yourself
and
to,
I took myself out to breakfast. I took myself for a beautiful coffee, poked around in stores, just walked by the river, had fresh air. It was like the first nice spring day, which just coincided. And we did take a vacation in the middle of it in February. And I said to everyone, I am completely off limits. So we took like it was about a 10-day vacation. And I said, I'm completely off limits. And I worked up until then. We went on vacation and then I came back. So put those breaks in before it breaks you.
right.
Because for me, if I have those things, that gives me an incredible amount of clarity. When you're buried in the legality and the paperwork, but also the risk preparation or mitigation, your head can spin in funny ways. You can
Mhm.
start to think, especially when you're dealing with legal documents, right? And how you're phrasing certain things. And you're just like, oh my gosh, are they taking advantage of me?
Heretofore
Right, right. Or the
notwithstanding.
lawyers are like, what if my HVAC unit goes and I'm going to be on the hook and they're going to take me to small claims court? And then that's when you need a break
Yeah.
because you know what? You get really, really maladjusted in your perspective. So that's why those reposes or whatever it is for you, like spend an evening with the friends, giggling your guts out, whatever
Mhm.
it might be.
So you're kind of talking about boundaries, right? Setting some
Yeah.
strong boundaries. And
Yeah.
it's like when I'm in this space, I'm 100% in this space. And then
Yeah.
I'm going to take a move to the right and I'm going to put myself in this space and everything over here is
Yeah.
going to
You
have to
got it.
wait.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like a little bit to me.
Yeah.
Um, I think it also sounds like don't be naive about the energy that it's going to take because, as you said, there's still a full-fledged operating business here, and it's
Yeah.
like you're adding a full-time job on top of it, going through the process of selling.
An absolute full time, an absolute more than full time. It can be a time and a half at times. And I was lucky that a good friend of mine said to my wonderful husband David, she said, just be prepared. It's like because I can have big reactions to things. She's like, just be prepared for Lizzie to be like out of sorts or have some big reactions
Hmm.
and that kind of thing. She goes, just prepare yourself because this ride, and I was very hyper conscious of those around me.
Hmm.
It was huge. And that's the other thing is when you sell your business, like there's still a lot to do afterwards, a lot of dust, but also in the negotiation when you said boundaries of that transition agreement. So that's how long you're sort of not on center stage, but you're in the wings. The business is transitioned. That person owns it. They have it, but you are still there as any key support, right? And it could be like, oh my gosh, what's the password to this? Or it could, like I'm trying to log in on a laptop or I'm trying to open up the
Hmm.
Hydro Ottawa account, whatever it might be. Or they might say, you have to put boundaries on that transition agreement because they could say, look, that shared drive of all of your contracts with weddings and third party providers really is not sensible. Can you restructure that for me? So you have to really think about how much are you going to give. It's usually
Hmm.
like a 30-day process, 2 week to 30 days. Now you've got to remember most sensible people when they're taking on a business, that's their business from there on out. But
Hmm.
you've got to protect yourself in that 30-day transition agreement because you have to make sure you're not just working tooth and nail. And mine was very, very like, I'm available Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And I kept to that because I was getting pings and dings Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And then in the last 2 weeks, I
Hmm.
recognized there were some things so that it was more 7 days a week. But put really stringent boundaries
Boundaries.
around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, we won't get into some of the details because those are confidential. But going back to the beginning of our conversation, you feel comfortable and confident with this next stage of life. that you will be able to take on
Yeah.
whatever is going to come. So that suggests that it was a successful cash rich exit in whatever that looked like for
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I think I know the answer, but I'm curious about how you rewarded yourself, or if you rewarded
Oh,
yourself
yeah. Good
with
answer.
something
Good question.
memorable
Yeah.
because of the of this transaction and this sale.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I had a girlfriend who sold her business and she did the same thing and she's you know like 10 years kind of younger than me as well because everyone assumes us movers and shakers have a big plan that we're gonna move on to next and it's just like no, my plan is to be feral and free for the summer and you know to just have a summer like haven't had one since I've been 10 or 11 years old. So then, you know, I was sitting there and I was going, geez, like I'm actually gonna be home. I'm gonna be home. You know, it's not just this like this transitory thing.
I'm all, oh, what's the Home Alone thing?
Home.
Yeah.
Except it was more like, yeah,
Yeah.
like I was born for this. I had no problems whatsoever slipping into this life, and it's still meaningful and it's busy on my own terms. My creative side of my brain is liberated because I don't have to take care of persnickety details and ducks nibbling me to death. So two things I did. One was like, I'm going to be home. So we haven't really done much to our house. So painted the whole interior. So it's like fresh and
Mm.
bright and calm. And that made a huge difference. You know, huge difference. David's not fond of change, but even he is just like, yeah, this makes a huge difference. And the other thing is like, summer is so precious. So I didn't want to travel a lot during the summer. We've done a few things here and there. So did the decking and the in the backyard and then got like a nice patio furniture set
Mhm.
and then like, you know, one of those little fire tables. My 9-year-old nephews are like, Auntie Liz, when can we come over? Right. So I'm not saying it's like the Four Seasons or a resort back there, Benny's, but it's an oasis and a tranquility because your home, I now have a very different relationship with my home and with our home and with our house because it can now be a hub to entertain, to have people over, for me to sit, to relax, to read, to be outside, you know, looking at those gardens and saying, you're not going to own me, so I'm not going to do too much to you. But then to have that because I am, you know, well, I'm home as much as I choose to be, but you know, to have that. So that was a big thing for me. And then still looking at planning like a really meaningful trip, maybe go back to Africa, but a big meaningful trip early in the winter. So that's the secondary thing that I'm going to do. So yeah, just like wow, you know, this was just a very functional place to sleep and eat, and now it's a home
I was gonna
again.
say now it's
It's really,
home.
now it's home. It's home. Yeah, well, Halifax is always going to be home.
Right.
But East Coaster at heart. But yeah, it's a home and it feels really lovely. It feels really lovely. And then I have time to, you know, just to add, just to do little things like to make a really good coffee and you're not jamming it in a travel mug, but like you're sitting there and it's just like, oh, the sky is beautiful. Or if it's one of those strawberry moons or kind of, you can wake up at 2 in the morning and just like take a gander at it. So it's really spending more time enjoying those life moments, those fresh breezes, that beautiful sky, the time on the water. And instead of spending the time on the things that are in front of you and need to be done, but then you can choose to do them with the people that you care to do them with. So family and friends take that front row again, as they've always been there, front of mind, but it
Mhm.
just hasn't always been like,
Can really
you know,
be present for it.
right when you've got like a broken air conditioner and need to hire someone and da da da, you know, those things really take on that super, you know, that work environment needs to function. And now that that's gone to really have that time and that perspective to really be there in those moments and be there for people, even not just a perfunctory phone call to say, how are you doing, but to
Hmm.
actually do something for
Hmm.
someone in order to support them through things. So
Awesome.
that's been really wonderful.
So, I mean, you've shared so much about this process. What would be potentially one piece of fun, frank advice that you could leave for the self-made nation here? Um, you know, thinking about their business and their exit strategy. What would
Yeah.
you say would be one key piece? One,
Yeah.
one frank
I think a big thing would be like plan, even if you are gung-ho in your business, even if you are just in like the starting phases, the first year or two, plan what that transition would look like. And when you think, recognize those cycles within yourself. If
advice.
you naturally make changes every 5 years, and then really look at what you need in that financial piece for your retirement and do that business valuation much earlier on, even if you're not planning on selling,
Hmm.
to realize how much that will or contribute to getting you towards certain goals and timelines. So do a business valuation for sure. Plan a transition and look at your transition plan every year, every couple of years, about taking yourself out of the equation and looking at those what your life would look at because yeah, the enjoyment side of life and as I said, having your creativity liberated, and you don't necessarily have a big plan of what to step into if the financials are there. Um, but yeah, really, really take a look at that. Really, really take a look at it. And wow, it's really fun on the other side. It's amazing. I love it. I love it.
Thank you so much for being with us here on the podcast, Elizabeth. It's a great joy to be able to share essentially the entire journey, even if it's the Cole's notes of the journey, because of course, a couple of hours on a podcast isn't the whole story, but does give, really good overview. So thank you so much for being open and willing to share. And yeah, looking forward to that next ice cream cone with you.
Absolutely. Trying to think of the flavor I want now.